The Great Hall of the Volanthi Empire was the largest building in the known galaxy. Its walls were made of blue crystal that glowed with soft light. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. Thousands of pillars held up the massive roof, and each pillar was carved with the history of a different species. Today, the hall was full. Over 10,000 beings from across the galaxy had come for the Conclave of Stars. This meeting happened only once every 100 years. Here, the powerful species decided the fate of the weak. Here, empires were made and destroyed with a single vote. Daniel Hayes walked through the massive doors and stopped. He had seen pictures of this place, but pictures could not capture how small it made him feel. He was just one human, standing barely 6 feet tall, wearing a simple gray suit. Around him, creatures of every shape and size filled the hall with noise and color. The Kreth warriors stood near the front. They were reptiles covered in thick green scales, each one standing over 8 feet tall. Their claws could cut through metal, and their teeth were the size of knives. They had conquered dozens of worlds and feared nothing. The Asheri floated in groups of 3 and 4. They had no solid bodies, just shapes made of pure light that shifted and changed. They could read minds and see the future. No one knew how old their species was, but some said they had been alive when the first stars formed. The Drix moved through the crowd on their 6 legs, their insect-like bodies clicking and buzzing. They were the merchants of the galaxy. They owned more wealth than any other species and used it to control trade across 1,000 systems. And then there were the Volanthi themselves. They looked almost human, but taller and thinner, with skin that shifted between blue and purple. They were the hosts of this conclave, and their emperor sat on a throne of living crystal at the far end of the hall. Daniel walked forward, keeping his eyes straight ahead. He could feel thousands of beings watching him. He could hear them whispering, "Is that a human?" Someone asked. "So small," another voice said. "So fragile. Why did they even bother to come?" Daniel ignored them. He had a job to do. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. In galactic terms, they were babies. They had no great fleets, no ancient technology, no psychic powers. They were just human, soft and weak and short-lived. But they had earned a seat at this conclave, even if it was the smallest seat in the room. Daniel found his platform. It was tucked away in a corner, far from the thrones and raised stages where the important species sat. The platform was barely big enough for one person to stand on. There was no chair, no shade, no comfort of any kind. He stepped onto it and stood quietly, his hands folded in front of him. Lord Carveth, the leader of the Kreth delegation, noticed him first. The massive reptile turned his head and let out a booming laugh that echoed through the hall. "Look at this," Carveth said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The humans have sent their champion, one small, soft creature to represent an entire species." The laughter spread. The Drix clicked their mandibles in amusement. The Ashori dimmed their light, a sign of dismissal. Even species that Daniel had never seen before joined in the mockery. "Tell me, human," Carveth continued, walking closer to Daniel's platform. His footsteps shook the floor. "What powers does your kind possess? Can you breathe fire? Can you survive in the void of space? Can you crush metal with your bare hands?" Daniel looked up at the towering reptile. "No," he said simply. "Can you read minds? See through walls? Move objects with your thoughts? No. Then what can you do?" Carveth spread his massive arms. "What makes humanity worthy of standing in this hall?" The entire chamber waited for Daniel's answer. He could feel the weight of their attention, the pressure of their judgment. In this moment, he represented every human who had ever lived. He took a slow breath. "We survive," he said. Carveth blinked. Then he laughed again, harder than before. You survive? That is your great power? Every species survives, human. That is the bare minimum for existence. Daniel did not argue. He did not defend himself. He simply stood there, quiet and still, as the laughter washed over him like a wave. From her throne beside the Emperor, Princess Velara watched the scene with interest. She was young for a Volanthe, only 300 years old, but she had attended many conclaves. She had seen species rise and fall. She had watched the strong crush the weak without mercy, but she had never seen anyone react to mockery the way this human did. He was not angry. He was not afraid. He was not ashamed. He simply stood there, accepting the insults as if they meant nothing. His face was calm, his body relaxed. Only his eyes moved, watching everything, missing nothing. "Father," Velara said softly, leaning toward the Emperor, "what do you know of these humans?" Emperor Thalrix barely glanced at Daniel. "Very little, daughter. They are young and weak. Their homeworld is a death trap filled with predators and poison. By all logic, they should have died out long ago. But they did not. No, they did not." The Emperor shrugged. "Some species are lucky. It means nothing in the long run. Within a century, humanity will be absorbed by a stronger power or destroyed entirely. They are irrelevant." Velara said nothing, but she was not convinced. She continued to watch Daniel as the opening ceremonies began. She watched him stand through hours of speeches and declarations. She watched him remain standing when other delegates sat in their comfortable chairs. She watched him show no reaction to the dozens of small insults that were thrown his way. And slowly, she began to understand something. The human was not passive. He was patient. There was a difference. A passive creature accepted its fate. It gave up and waited for the end. But patience was something else entirely. Patience meant waiting for the right moment. Patience meant saving your strength for when it mattered. Velara had seen predators hunt before. The most dangerous ones were not the fastest or the strongest. They were the ones who could wait, perfectly still, for hours or days, until their prey made a single mistake. This human, she realized, was waiting for something. When the first day ended, Daniel walked out of the great hall without speaking to anyone. His platform remained empty, a tiny island of space in an ocean of contempt. No one approached him. No one offered friendship or alliance. He was completely alone. That night, Velara went to the royal archives and requested every file the Volanthe had on humanity. The archivists were surprised. No one had asked about humans in decades. But they obeyed their princess and brought her the records. She began to read. By morning, she had not slept. And she was very, very afraid. The files on humanity were stored in the oldest section of the archives. Dust covered the shelves, and the lights flickered with age. Velara sat alone at a reading table, surrounded by stacks of data crystals that contained everything the Volanthe knew about the human species. It was not much. Humanity had only made contact with the galactic community 200 years ago. They were considered too young and too weak to matter. Most species had stopped paying attention to them within a decade. But what little information existed made Velara's blood run cold. She started with the basic facts. Humans came from a planet called Earth, a world classified as a Category 7 death world. This classification was the highest level of danger possible. Worlds in this category were supposed to be impossible to live on. Earth had extreme temperatures, ranging from far below freezing to hot enough to kill most species. It had violent storms, earthquakes, and floods. Its atmosphere contained oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could burn through metal given enough time. Its water was filled with salt and acid. Its soil was crawling with parasites and bacteria. And the animals. Velara read about the creatures that shared Earth with humans. Predators with teeth and claws that could tear flesh from bone. Insects that carried deadly diseases. Fish that could swallow a human whole. Snakes that killed with a single bite. Even the plants were dangerous, covered in thorns and poison dot. How did any species survive such a world? Valara read on. Humans, she learned, were persistent predators. This term was new to her, so she searched for its meaning. What she found made her stop breathing. Most predators in the galaxy used speed or strength to catch their prey. They were fast, so they could catch things that ran. They were strong, so they could overpower things that fought back. If a chase lasted more than a few minutes, most predators gave up and tried again later. Humans did not give up. When humans hunted, they did not try to outrun their prey. They did not try to overpower it. Instead, they simply followed it. They walked after it for hours, days, weeks. They tracked it across mountains and deserts and rivers. They never stopped. They never rested. They just kept coming. And eventually, their prey collapsed from exhaustion. It could not run anymore. It could not fight back. It just lay there, waiting for the humans to catch up. Valara thought about Daniel Hayes standing in the Great Hall. She thought about how calm he had been, how patient. She thought about his eyes, always watching, always waiting. He was hunting them. All of them. And they did not even know it. She kept reading. Human bodies were strange and terrifying in their own way. They were not armored like the Kreth. They were not made of energy like the Ashori. They were soft, covered in thin skin that could be cut or burned or broken. But they healed. They healed faster and better than almost any species in the galaxy. Bones that broke would grow back stronger. Skin that was cut would form scars that were tougher than the original tissue. Diseases that attacked their bodies were remembered, and the next time that disease tried to attack, the human body would destroy it immediately. They called this an immune system. Valara called it adaptation. Even more disturbing was what humans could survive. They could lose limbs and keep living. They could lose massive amounts of blood and recover. They could be poisoned, burned, frozen, crushed, and starved, and still refuse to die. There were records of humans walking for miles with broken legs, fighting for hours with holes in their bodies, swimming through freezing water until their hearts stopped and then somehow starting again. Their species had a saying, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." Valara believed it, but the most frightening part of the files was not about human bodies. It was about human minds. Humans, she read, had evolved to bond with other creatures. On their homeworld, they had taken wolves, one of the most dangerous predators on Earth, and turned them into loyal companions. They had done the same with horses, birds, even insects. Creatures that should have been their enemies became their friends, and they did not stop with animals. Humans bonded with each other more strongly than any other species. They formed families, tribes, nations. They would die for strangers simply because those strangers belonged to the same group. They would sacrifice everything for people they had never met. This was dangerous enough. But there was something even worse. Humans could bond with ideas. They could believe in something so strongly that they would give their lives for it. Freedom, justice, love, revenge. These were not physical things. They could not be touched or seen. But humans treated them as if they were more real than anything else in the universe. A human who believed in something was not just an enemy. They were a force of nature. They could not be bribed, threatened, or reasoned with. They would keep fighting until they won or until they were completely destroyed. And sometimes, even death did not stop them. Their ideas would live on in other humans, passed down through generations, growing stronger with each telling. Valara closed the file and sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. She thought about the great empires of the galaxy. The Kreth conquered through strength. The Ashori, controlled through knowledge. The Drix manipulated through wealth. But all of these powers had limits. Strength could be overcome by greater strength. Knowledge could be stolen. Wealth could be spent. But how did you fight something that did not know how to give up? How did you defeat an enemy that grew stronger every time you heard it? How did you destroy an idea? The answer was simple. You could not. Vilara understood now why Daniel Hayes had not fought back when Lord Carveth mocked him. He was not weak. He was not scared. He was saving his strength. Humans had spent their entire existence fighting things bigger and stronger than themselves. They had learned that direct confrontation was often suicide. So they waited. They watched. They learned their enemy's weaknesses. And then, when the moment was right, they struck. The second day of the conclave was about to begin. Vilara dressed quickly and hurried to the great hall. Valar dressed quickly in hall. She did not know what was going to happen, but she knew she needed to see it. When she arrived, the hall was already full. The delegates had taken their positions, and the Emperor was preparing to begin the day's proceedings. Daniel Hayes stood on his tiny platform in the corner, exactly where he had been the day before. But something was different. Vilara looked at him more carefully. His posture had changed. Yesterday, he had been relaxed, almost casual. Today, he was tense. His weight was balanced on the balls of his feet. His hands were loose at his sides, ready to move. He was expecting something. The answer came quickly. Lord Carveth stood from his throne and walked to the center of the hall. His scales gleamed under the crystal lights, and his voice boomed across the chamber. "I invoke the ancient right of challenge," he announced. "By the laws of this conclave, I claim the right to trial by combat." The hall went quiet. Trial by combat was an old tradition, rarely used but still legal. It allowed a stronger species to eliminate a weaker one by killing their champion. If the weaker species could not defend itself, it lost all rights and protections. "I challenge the Mallory," Carveth continued, pointing one massive claw at a small delegation near the back of the hall. Vilara looked at the Mallory. They were a peaceful species, covered in soft feathers, with large eyes and gentle voices. They were scholars and artists, not warriors. They had no army, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. Their representative, a small female named Historian Twenthe, rose on shaking legs. Her feathers were trembling with fear. "I accept the challenge," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "As is my duty." Everyone knew what would happen next. Carveth would kill her in seconds. The Mallory would lose their protected status. Their worlds would be open for conquest. Their people sold as slaves or simply killed for sport. It was legal. It was traditional. It was wrong. And then a voice cut through the silence of the hall. "Wait." Every head turned toward the corner where Daniel Hayes had stepped forward from his platform. I stand as champion for the Mallory," he said. "Under Article 7 of the Conclave Charter, I claim the right to fight in their place." The hall exploded into chaos. The Great Hall had never been so loud. Every species was talking at once, their voices mixing into a roar that shook the crystal walls. The Drix clicked their bets to each other, already calculating odds. The Ashori glowed brighter with surprise. Even the normally calm Volanti whispered urgently among themselves. A human had challenged a Kreth. It was madness. It was suicide. It was the most interesting thing to happen at a conclave in 300 years. Lord Carveth stood in the center of the hall, his massive body completely still. His yellow eyes were fixed on Daniel Hayes, and his lips slowly pulled back to reveal rows of teeth as long as daggers. Then he laughed. It was not a normal laugh. It was the sound of a predator who had just been offered free food. It started low in his chest and grew until it filled the entire chamber. A human? Carveth said between laughs. A soft, weak, tiny human wants to fight me. He turned to face the other delegates. Did you all hear this? The smallest creature in the room wants to challenge the greatest warrior in the galaxy. More laughter joined his. The drakes were clicking so fast their sounds blurred together. A group of reptilian species near the front were slapping their tails on the ground in amusement. Even some of the Volanti nobles were smiling, but not everyone laughed. Princess Valara sat frozen in her throne. She had read the files. She knew what humans were capable of. She wanted to shout, to warn Carveth, but the words stuck in her throat. Historian Twenthe, the Mallory representative, rushed toward Daniel. Her feathers were pressed flat against her body in distress. Human, no, she pleaded. You cannot do this. Lord Carveth has killed over 200 challengers. Warriors twice your size. Creatures with armor and weapons and powers you cannot imagine. He will destroy you. Daniel looked down at her with calm eyes. Do you consent to my challenge? Under Article 7, both parties must agree. I cannot let you die for us. We are not worth your life. Everyone is worth fighting for. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. Do you consent? Twenthe's large eyes filled with tears. She looked at her delegation, the handful of Mallory who had come to the conclave hoping for peace and friendship. They would all die if she refused. Their entire species would suffer. I consent, she whispered. Daniel nodded once. Then he turned back to face Carveth. The Creth Lord had stopped laughing. His eyes were narrow now, studying the human with something close to curiosity. You know you cannot win, Carveth said. Why do you do this? Because it is right, right? Carveth snorted. There is no right or wrong in the galaxy, human. There is only strong and weak. The strong take what they want. The weak accept what they are given. This is the law of nature. Maybe, Daniel said. But humans have a different law. We call it stubbornness. Emperor Thalarix raised his hand, and the hall fell silent. The challenge is valid, the Emperor announced. The human Daniel Hayes will fight Lord Carveth of the Creth Empire as champion for the Mallory Collective. The combat will take place at sunset in the Arena of Truth. He paused, looking at Daniel with something that might have been pity. Human, you may withdraw your challenge without dishonor. No one will think less of you. Some battles cannot be won. Daniel shook his head slowly. I do not withdraw. Then prepare yourself. The arena shows no mercy. The hall began to empty as delegates left to prepare for the evening's entertainment. Most were already placing bets on how long the human would survive. The most generous predictions gave him 30 seconds. Daniel returned to his platform and sat down for the first time since arriving at the conclave. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly, deeply, like he was falling asleep. Valara watched him for a long time. She wanted to go to him, to ask him why he was throwing his life away. But she did not move. Something told her that the human knew exactly what he was doing. The Arena of Truth was ancient. It had been carved from the living rock of the Volanthi homeworld over 1,000,000 years ago, back when the Volanthi themselves had settled disputes through combat. The walls were stained dark with the blood of 10,000 species. The sand on the floor had been replaced hundreds of times, because it kept getting soaked with death. 10,000 spectators filled the seats around the arena. Every delegate from the conclave was there, along with thousands of Volanthi citizens who had heard about the unusual fight. Screens floating in the air would broadcast the combat to trillions of beings across the galaxy. Lord Carveth entered first. He wore no armor. He carried no weapons. He did not need them. His scales were harder than steel, and his claws could tear through starship hulls. He stood in the center of the arena and raised his arms, letting the crowd see his power. The cheering was deafening. Then Daniel entered. He had removed his diplomatic suit. He wore simple black pants and a sleeveless shirt that showed his arms. Compared to HFY, he looked pathetic. His muscles were visible, but they were nothing compared to the mountains of flesh that covered the HFY's body. In his right hand, he carried a knife. Not a laser blade or a plasma cutter, or any of the advanced weapons available in the galaxy. Just a simple knife made of steel, the kind humans have been making for thousands of years. The crowd went silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again. A knife? HFY's voice echoed across the arena. You bring a knife to fight a HFY? Daniel did not respond. He walked to his starting position and stood quietly, the knife held loosely in his hand. Princess Valara leaned forward in her seat. She could see Daniel's face clearly from her position in the royal box. He was sweating slightly. His heart must have been pounding. He was about to fight something that could kill him with a single blow, but his eyes were calm, focused, patient. He was not afraid to die, she realized. He had accepted that possibility before he ever stepped into the arena. He had made peace with it. Now he was just going to do his best. Emperor Thalaric stood. Let the combat begin. HFY charged. The HFY moved faster than something that large should be able to move. He covered the distance between them in 3 massive strides, his clawed hand sweeping toward Daniel's head with enough force to tear it clean off. Daniel was not there. He had moved the moment HFY started running. Not backward, as everyone expected. Forward. He ducked under the HFY's swing and rolled between his legs. Coming up behind the massive reptile, his knife flashed. A thin line of dark blood appeared on the back of HFY's knee. Right where the scales were thinnest, the crowd gasped. HFY spun around, roaring with surprise and pain. It was a tiny wound, barely more than a scratch. But it was a wound. The human had actually cut him. Lucky, HFY growled. It will not happen again. He attacked again, faster this time. His claws cut through the air like swords, each strike powerful enough to cut Daniel in half. But the human kept moving, ducking and rolling and spinning away. He never tried to block. He never tried to match strength with strength. He just kept moving, always staying one step ahead, always finding the gaps in HFY's attacks, and every few seconds his knife would flash, and another thin line of blood would appear on the HFY's body. The crowd fell silent. This was not what they had expected. They had expected a quick death, a brief entertainment, a reminder of the natural order of things. Instead, they were watching something impossible. The human was winning, not through strength, not through speed, through patience, through endurance, through the simple, terrifying refusal to give up. Valara understood now. HFY was an ambush predator. He was built for quick, explosive kills. Every second the fight continued, he was getting weaker. Every drop of blood he lost made him slower. But Daniel just kept moving. He never stopped. He never rested. He just kept going, exactly like his ancestors had done when they chased prey across the plains of their deadly homeworld. The fight lasted 2 hours. By the end, HFY was stumbling. His scales were covered in his own blood from hundreds of small cuts. His breathing was ragged. His movements were slow and clumsy. Daniel was not uninjured. A glancing blow had broken 3 of his ribs. His left arm hung useless at his side. Blood poured from a cut on his forehead, half blinding him, but he was still standing, still moving, still waiting. Yield, Daniel said quietly. HFY fell to his knees. He looked up at the human with eyes full of disbelief. HFY do not yield, he gasped. Then I'm sorry. Daniel moved one final time. His knife found the gap in HFY's throat armor, the one weak spot that his hours of observation had identified. The great HFY warrior fell forward into the sand and did not move again. The arena was completely silent. Daniel stood over his fallen enemy, breathing hard, barely able to stay on his feet. He looked up at the royal box, at the emperor, at the princess, at all the beings who had laughed at him. "The Mallory are under humanity's protection now," he said. His voice was quiet, but in the silence, everyone heard him. "Any challenge against them is a challenge against us." Then he collapsed. Daniel woke up slowly. His body felt strange, like it was wrapped in warm water. He could not feel his injuries anymore. The pain was gone, replaced by a gentle tingling that spread through every part of him. He opened his eyes. The room was wide and clean, filled with soft light that seemed to come from nowhere. Strange machines hummed around his bed, their purpose beyond his understanding. Tubes connected to his arms carried fluids that glowed faintly green. He was in a Volanti medical bay. The technology here was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had developed. These machines could heal wounds that Earth doctors would consider fatal. He tried to sit up and found that his body obeyed him easily. His ribs no longer hurt. His arm moved without pain. Even the cut on his forehead was gone, leaving no scar behind. "You should rest." Daniel turned his head. Princess Velara sat in a chair beside his bed. She had been there for some time, judging by the tired look in her eyes. Her blue-purple skin looked paler than before, and she held herself with a tension that had not been there when he first saw her. "How long was I unconscious?" Daniel asked. 2 days. Your injuries were severe. Any other species would have died in that arena." Velara paused. "You should have died. The doctors say your heart stopped 3 times on the way here." "Only 3? Daniel managed a weak smile. "That is not so bad." Velara did not smile back. She leaned forward, studying him with eyes that had lost all traces of the dismissive attitude she had shown on the first day of the conclave. "I read your species files," she said, "before the fight. I learned about your homeworld, your evolution, your history." She shook her head slowly. "I thought I understood what humans were. I thought I was prepared for what you would do in that arena. I was wrong." Daniel shifted in his bed, sitting up against the soft pillows. "What did you expect?" "I expected you to fight cleverly, to use your endurance to outlast Carveth, as your species has always outlasted its enemies." Velara's voice dropped. "I did not expect you to be willing to die. Dying was always a possibility. No." Velara stood up abruptly, pacing across the small room. "It was more than that. You were not just accepting the possibility of death. You were ready for it. You had made peace with it before you ever stepped into that arena. I could see it in your eyes." She stopped and turned to face him. "Why? The Mallory are nothing to humanity. They have no resources, no technology, no strategic value. Saving them gains you nothing. Why would you throw your life away for strangers?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his hands, turning them over slowly, examining the new skin where his wounds had been. "On my homeworld," he said finally, "there is an old story. A man is walking along a beach after a storm. The beach is covered with starfish that have been washed up by the waves. There are thousands of them, dying in the sun." He looked up at Velara. The man sees another man picking up starfish one by one and throwing them back into the ocean. He asks, "Why are you doing this?" "There are too many. You cannot possibly save them all. What difference does it make?" Daniel smiled. The second man picks up another starfish and throws it into the water. Then he says, "It made a difference to that one." Velara stared at him. "That is your answer? One small act of kindness in an ocean of suffering?" "Yes, but it changes nothing. The strong will still prey on the weak. The galaxy will continue as it always has. Your sacrifice will be forgotten within a generation." Daniel shook his head. "You are wrong, Princess. Every act of kindness changes the universe. Maybe not in ways we can see. Maybe not in our lifetime. But the Mallory will remember what happened here. They will tell their children and their children's children. And someday, when they have the chance to help someone else, they will do it. Because they will remember that someone helped them. He leaned back against his pillows. That is how humans survived our homeworld. Not by being the strongest or the fastest. By helping each other. By refusing to let our neighbors die alone. One small act at a time, building something bigger than any of us could build by ourselves. Velara sat back down in her chair, her expression troubled. My father believes humanity is too young and weak to matter. He thinks you will be conquered or destroyed within a century. Maybe he is right. Daniel's voice was calm. Humans have faced extinction many times. Ice ages, plagues, wars. We have come close to destroying ourselves more than once. But we are still here because you survive. Because we refuse to give up. Daniel met her eyes. That is the thing your files probably did not explain very well. It is not just that humans can endure hardship. It is that we get stronger from it. Every challenge we face, every enemy we fight, every disaster we survive, it teaches us something. It makes us better. He sat up straighter. Lord Carveth laughed when I told him that survival was our power. He thought I meant we were good at running away. But that is not what I meant at all. I meant that no matter what happens, no matter how bad things get, humanity will find a way. We always have. We always will. Velara was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. The other delegates are afraid of you now, I know. They are talking about preemptive action. Destroying humanity before you become too strong to stop. Daniel nodded slowly. I expected that. Does that not worry you? Of course it worries me. For the first time, emotion crept into Daniel's voice. I did not come to this conclave looking for war. I came looking for peace. I wanted to show the galaxy that humans could be allies, not enemies. That we could work together, help each other, build something better than what exists now. He looked at Velara with sad eyes. But I have been doing this job long enough to know that some people only understand strength. Lord Carveth would never have respected words. The only language he understood was violence. So I spoke to him in his language. And now everyone is afraid of what else you might say. Yes, Daniel sighed. It was a risk. I knew that going in. But the alternative was watching the Mallory die and doing nothing. And I could not do that. I could not stand there and let innocent people suffer when I had the power to help them. Velara leaned forward. My father wants to know what humanity really wants. He sent me here to find out. He thinks you have some hidden agenda, some master plan for galactic conquest. What do you think? The princess was quiet for a moment. I think you are exactly what you appear to be. A stubborn, foolish, impossibly brave creature who genuinely wants to help people. She shook her head. I have never met anyone like you. Daniel laughed softly. There are 8 billion humans on Earth. Most of them would have done exactly what I did. We are all stubborn and foolish and brave. It is in our blood. That is what frightens me. Velara stood up again. One human defeated the greatest Kreth warrior in history. What can 1 billion of you do? What can 8 billion do? Anything. Daniel's voice was simple, direct. We could do anything. Build paradise or destroy everything. Create or annihilate. Heal or harm. He looked at her steadily. That is why I am here, princess. That is why humanity sent a diplomat instead of a general. Because we know what we are capable of. We know how dangerous we can be. And we do not want to become that. What do you want? Friends? The word hung in the air between them. Partners? Allies? We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to learn from the galaxy and share what we have learned. We want to help when we can and accept help when we need it. He reached out and took her hand gently. We want to prove that strength does not have to mean cruelty. That power does not have to mean domination. That survival does not have to mean destroying everyone else. Velara looked down at his hand holding hers. His skin was soft and warm, so different from the scales and shells and energy forms she was used to. The final day of the conclave is tomorrow, she said quietly. My father has agreed to let you address the full assembly. He wants to hear what you have to say. Daniel nodded. Then I will tell them the truth. All of it. The good and the bad. What humanity has done and what we are capable of doing. And then I will ask them to give us a chance. And if they refuse? Daniel smiled, but there was steel behind it. Then we will survive. We always do. But I hope it does not come to that. I hope they can see what I see when I look at the galaxy. What do you see? Potential. His grip on her hand tightened. So much potential. So many species, so many worlds, so many possibilities. Working together, we could do incredible things. We could explore the universe, unlock its secrets, build civilizations that last forever. His eyes shone with something that might have been tears. Or we could keep fighting each other until nothing is left. The choice is ours. All of us. Velara pulled her hand away slowly. She walked to the door and paused, looking back at him. Get some rest. Daniel Hayes. Tomorrow will change everything. Then she was gone, leaving him alone with his thoughts and his hopes and his fears for the future. The Great Hall was different on the final day of the conclave. The delegates still filled their platforms and thrones, but the atmosphere had changed. The easy confidence was gone. The casual cruelty had faded. In its place was something new. Uncertainty, fear. And underneath it all, curiosity. Daniel Hayes stood in the center of the chamber, exactly where Lord Carveth had challenged the Milori 3 days ago. He was fully healed, thanks to Volanti medicine, but he still looked small and fragile compared to the beings around him. The Kreth delegation sat in silence. Their new leader, Lord Carveth's younger brother, watched Daniel with eyes that held neither hatred nor respect. Just careful attention. The Drix had stopped clicking their calculations. The Ashori had dimmed their glow to focus on the human's words. Even the smallest, weakest species in the hall were paying attention. Emperor Thalarix raised his hand, and the murmurs died away. Daniel Hayes of humanity, the Emperor said formally. You have requested to address this conclave. We have agreed to hear your words. Speak now, and speak truthfully. Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been working towards since before he left Earth. Every decision, every sacrifice, every risk had led to this. Thank you, Emperor, he said. His voice was not loud, but the acoustics of the hall carried it to every ear and sensor and receptor. I will speak truthfully. That is all I know how to do. He turned slowly, looking at the assembled delegates. Some met his eyes. Others looked away. 3 days ago, most of you laughed at me. You looked at my small body, my simple clothes, my lack of powers, and you saw weakness. You saw an inferior species pretending to belong in a galaxy of giants. No one laughed now. You were not wrong, Daniel continued. By your standards, humanity is weak. We cannot breathe fire or survive in space or crush metal with our hands. We cannot read minds or see the future or live for thousands of years. By every measurement that matters in this galaxy, we are at the bottom. He paused, letting his words settle. But I am not here to apologize for what we lack. I am here to tell you about what we have. Daniel began to walk slowly through the chamber, looking at different delegations as he spoke. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. Our planet has temperatures that range from cold enough to freeze blood to hot enough to boil it. Our atmosphere contains a gas that burns metal. Our water is filled with salt and poison. Our land is covered with predators that saw us as food. He stopped near the Kreth delegation. We had no scales to protect us, no claws to defend ourselves, no venom or armor or size. We were soft and slow and small. The new Kreth leader shifted uncomfortably. But we survived, Daniel said. Do you know how? He turned back to the wider assembly. We survived because we learned to work together. One human alone was prey, but a group of humans working together could bring down creatures 10 times their size. We learned to cooperate, to communicate, to share what we knew with each other. Daniel moved toward the Drix section. We developed trade, exchanging resources and skills so that everyone benefited. We created laws to prevent the strong from simply taking what they wanted from the weak. We built societies where the individual mattered, where every life had value. The Drix clicked quietly among themselves. And we made mistakes, Daniel admitted. Terrible mistakes. We fought wars that killed millions of our own kind. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire world. We came close to ending ourselves more times than I can count. His voice grew stronger. But we also learned from those mistakes. Every war taught us the cost of hatred. Every disaster showed us the importance of preparation. Every failure made us stronger, smarter, more determined to do better. He walked toward the center of the hall again. That is what I wanted you to see in that arena. Not just that humans can fight, but that we will not give up. No matter how big our enemy is, no matter how impossible the odds seem, we will keep going until we win or until we are completely destroyed. Daniel looked up at the Emperor's throne. Lord Carveth asked me what humans could do. I told him we survive. He laughed because he thought survival meant running away. But survival for humans means something different. He raised his voice so that every being in the hall could hear him clearly. Survival means getting back up after you fall. It means healing from wounds that should have killed you. It means learning from your defeats and coming back stronger. It means refusing to accept that any problem is impossible, any enemy unbeatable, any dream unreachable. Daniel spread his hands. That is what humanity offers the galaxy. Not strength, not technology, not wealth. We offer stubbornness. We offer determination. We offer the absolute refusal to give up, no matter what. He looked at the Mallory delegation. Historian Twenthe was crying openly, her feathers damp with tears. I fought for the Mallory because they deserve to be protected. Because being weak does not mean you deserve to die. Because every life has value, and every species has something to contribute to the universe. Then he turned to face all the delegates who had laughed at him. I would do the same for any of you. Any species that needed help, any world that faced destruction, any people who had no one else to stand for them. Humanity would be there, not because we expect payment or reward, but because it is right. The hall was completely silent. I know what some of you are thinking, Daniel said quietly. You are thinking about what my species could become. You see a young race that has already produced warriors capable of defeating your champions. You calculate what we might do in 100 years, 1,000 years, when we have spread across the stars and multiplied beyond counting. He nodded slowly. You should think about that. You should consider the possibilities. Because we have thought about them too. Daniel's voice grew hard. Humanity knows what we are capable of. We have seen our own darkness. We have committed acts of cruelty and destruction that would horrify most species. We have come closer to destroying ourselves than any outside enemy ever could. He let that sink in before continuing. But we have also seen our light. We have built beauty and wonder and love. We have created art that brings tears to eyes and music that lifts the spirit. We have sacrificed ourselves for strangers, traveled across oceans to help distant peoples, worked miracles of compassion and generosity. Daniel looked around the hall one more time. The question is not what humanity will become. The question is what the galaxy will help us become. If you treat us as enemies, we will learn to fight. If you try to destroy us, we will learn to be dangerous. If you show us nothing but cruelty, we will become hard and cold. His voice softened. But if you show us friendship, we will learn to trust. If you share your knowledge, we will grow wise. If you treat us as partners, we will become the greatest allies you have ever known. He stood straight and tall, looking small, but somehow filling the entire chamber with his presence. I am not asking you to trust humanity. Not yet. We have not earned that. I am only asking you to give us a chance. Let us prove what we can be. Let us show you that the galaxy does not have to be a place where the strong prey on the weak. Let us work together to build something better. Daniel bowed his head. That is all I have to say. Thank you for listening. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. It started with the Mallory, their voices rising in a gentle song of gratitude. The Ashori glowed brighter, pulsing with light. Other species joined in, each in their own way, creating a wave of sound and color that filled the great hall. Not everyone participated. The Kreth remained silent. Some delegations looked uncertain, unwilling to commit. But enough joined in to create something that had not been heard in the conclave for centuries. Hope. Emperor Thalaric stood. The noise slowly faded. The conclave will vote on humanity's petition for full membership, he announced. But before we do, I wish to say something. He looked down at Daniel with eyes that had lost their dismissive coldness. I have ruled this empire for 3,000 years. I have seen species rise and fall. I have watched civilizations crumble and new ones take their place. In all that time, I have never seen anything like what this human did in our arena. The Emperor descended from his throne, walking down the steps until he stood before Daniel. Not the fighting, he clarified. The fighting was impressive, but others have won against greater odds. What impressed me was what came before and after. The patience to wait for the right moment. The wisdom to know when to act. The courage to speak truth to power. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder, and the compassion to fight for strangers who could offer nothing in return. Thalaric turned to face his people. I vote to accept humanity as full members of the galactic community, with all the rights and responsibilities that brings. The voting took hours, but in the end, the result was clear. Humanity was accepted. When Daniel finally left the Great Hall, Princess Vylara was waiting for him. You did it, she said. Daniel smiled, exhausted but happy. We did it together. All of us. Every human who ever lived, every struggle we ever faced, every lesson we ever learned. It all led to this moment. Vylara walked beside him as they left the ancient building. The sun was setting over the Volanthi homeworld, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. What happens now? She asked. Daniel looked at the beautiful alien sunset, thinking.